Hello po, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. Before we start our discussion, how are you? How are you to find out, Charot? How are you these days, guys? How was the exam? Okay. And how was the exam? Was it okay? Was the exam okay? Mga pita. Hmm? Okay ra siya? Okay ra ang exam, guys? The exam is just okay na lang.
Okay
It's just
ang exam, ma'am. Ang mga quizzes ra assignment ang lisod.
assignment, no? Sige lang, it's very ano manggod complicated gid siya kay syntax sa manggod ta, and especially that we are going to focus on feature structure now. It would be a very difficult for in some cases. So let's start right away. Let me show you my screen. So today we are going to have a little bit of review or more on review sa chapter 4, which is heads. This one, let me show you, which is more on heads, complements, and modifiers. And I will also be discussing, can you see my screen? This one? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and we are
Yes,
also
ma'am.
going to learn more on subjects and complements. Basically, the important part of this lecture is how to understand feature structure. Okay? Do you have a hard time, or is it easy for you guys to understand the feature structure? Unsa na feature structure, mom? Okay, let me show you this one. Okay, so this is the feature structure. If you have, have a hard problem with this one, kaniba?
Oh
Did you?
no!
Oh no! That's why I figure it's very important that we have to discuss this one, because it's very important. Okay, especially that we are going to mostly use this in our analysis and discussion. So let's start. Let's start para dali rata mahumano. Okay, madugong bakbakan itech. Okay, so let's have it this one. Kadot lang ha. Okay, so let's go start first with the heads, complements, and modifiers. So in the previous chapters, we've learned about some of the PS rules or some of the rules of the grammars that is basic and that is represented by some of the, PS rules. And that we have to now focus on heads, complements, and modifiers. So in syntax, we have two types. We have the internal syntax and the external syntax. So internal syntax basically deals with how given phrase itself is constructed in a well-formed manner, whereas external syntax is concerned with how a phrase can be used in a large construction. So for example, these example sentences, some of these example sentences are ungrammatical in a sense, like the one with the asterisk. So why is the sentence only the grammatical one or acceptable? So John put his gold under the bathtub because it's the only sentence that satisfies the condition of the verb put, okay, which selects an NP and a PP, or a noun phrase and a prepositional phrase as its complement and is combined with the VP, which is put. This is the VP, the verb phrase. Okay, so remember that there are certain rules in English, whereas the head, okay, the head selects the VP, the NP, and the PP of the rest of the sentence. So I hope that you have understood that one. And let's have here the external syntax is concerned with the external environment in which a phrase occurs. So some of the unacceptable examples here are in this one. Are legitimate expressions if they occur in the proper syntax context. So meanwhile, let's have this example. The king kept put his gold under the bathtub. The king kept putting his gold under the bathtub. So the VP, this one, put his gold under the bathtub. That's the VP because Basically, it has a verb as the head of the phrase, right? Is a well-formed phrase, but cannot occur in this sentence because the environment where such a finite VP occurs is not possible. So that's why the verb kept requires the presence of the gerontive VP, like putting his gold under the bathtub, and therefore imposes an external constraints on the VP. So there are some cases that the internal syntax is kanang regulates ba nag-form kanang instruct niya kung unsay grammatical o grammatical, and at the same time ang external po niya, external syntax or the rest of the sentence regulates if that phrase is acceptable sa whole external environment sa sentence. Okay? Nasabtan ako, guys. Oh no, mom, it's very difficult so early in the morning. Sige lang guys, hinihinay lang to, masabtan na lagi din nato anytime soon. So let's go on to the notion of head, complements, and modifier. So one important property we observe in English phrase internal syntax is that in building up any phrase, there is one obligatory, or meaning to say compulsory siya nga element in each phrase, and that is each phrase has an essential element, which is of course the head of the phrase. So for example, in an NP there should be a noun because that is a noun phrase and that is the head of the phrase. In a VP, of course, the head should always be the verb because it's a verb phrase, and as well as the adjective phrase and so on. So the head now in each phrase determines its projection into larger phrasal constituents. So for example, the head of the NP does have an N, the head of the VP, and so on. So the notion of headedness plays an important role in grammar. Okay, for example, let's take into consideration this example, the two sentences. The defendant denied the accusation, so that is grammatical or acceptable. Then we had the second sentence, the defendant denied. Now in this case, the verb denied requires requires an object NP, whereas handed here in the second example requires two NP complements. So in this case, the properties of the head verb itself determines what kind of elements it will combine with in the whole sentence. Okay, so magbuot ang head sa sentence or ang head sa phrase kung unsa ang complement nga iyang dawaton sa sentence for it to become grammatical or acceptable. And we also have here the notion of complement. So complements include direct objects, indirect objects, predicative complement, and oblique complement, since these are all potentially required by some verb or others. Okay, so the properties of the head become properties of the whole phrase. So in English, we have this simple rule, declarative sentence rule rather. So each declarative sentence must contain a finite VP as its head. So each finite VP is headed by a finite verb. So if we amend an grammatical example above, include a verb but not a finite one, they are still ungrammatical. For example, they to be eager to leave the meeting. So basically, these are ungrammatical because the verbs used are not finite. Okay? So mean to say, it's not kanang dili siya stable ba? Okay? So dapat sa isa ka relationship, stable gud siya para makumpleto acceptable ang tanan. Okay, so in addition to complements of a head, a phrase may also contain modifiers or called adjuncts. So in this example, the italicized phrases are adjuncts or modifiers. So the PP offered in his office, rather, the PP serve as the adjunct or modifier in these sentences. So here provides further information about the action of the described by the verb, but are not required by such verbs. So, pwede siya nga wala. For example, Tom offered his advice to his students. Pwede ra siya mag-end ana. But there is modifiers which are kanang not necessary, but sa tawag gani kanang pwede ra siya wala. Pwede po siya naa, pwede po siya wala. Okay, so these phrases are optional and function as modifiers, and they function as they function to augment the minimal phrase projected from the head verb in this example offered. So the VP includes this kind of modifier to form a maximal phrase. So we might say that the inner VP, this one, the inner VP is a minimal phrase. With the addition of a modifier, it now becomes a maximal phrase. This one right here. The whole VP with the modifier phrase or the modifier. Okay, so we have seen what is in discussed in the previous ones or in the previous section are summarized in this one. So these are definitions. Now we can also differentiate complements between modifiers through these several tests. So I will no longer discuss this one because these are self-explanatory. So we have the first test, obligatoriness, iterability, do so test, constancy of semantic contribution, structural difference, and ordering difference. Now, what we have to focus more here is the PS rules, the XBAR rules, and features of these rules. So we have two main issues that arises with the content of the PS rules in the previous chapter. The first one is the headedness of each phrase, which is often called the endocentricity property of each phrase. So one common problem or property of the rule is that every phrase has its own head. But there are problems. There is a theoretical questions whether or not we can have rules like the following. In a VP, can we have a PNP as as the head of the of this phrase rule? So there are some questions of whether or not the PS rules have this endocentricity, okay, property in these phrases. So nothing in the grammar makes these PS rules unusual or different in a way from the set in the previous example, like this one here. However, if we allow such non-endocentric PS rules in which a phrase does not have a lexical head, which is very important, the headedness, the notion of headedness in a phrase, the grammar would then be too powerful to generate only the grammatical sentence of the language. So that is a problem. Another limit in PS rules is that an issue of redundancy. So, for example, the problem disappeared, the accusation, the problem disappeared. Another example, the defendant denied the accusation. So there are some times that what's the name? Each verb has its own requirement of complements. For example, the verb deny requires an MP, whereas disappear does not require an NP. And give requires two NPs as its complement. So the different patterns of complementation are said to define definite subcategories of type of verb. So the specific pattern of complements is known as the subcategorization requirement of each verb, which is represented as the following: intransitive verb, transitive verb, or the transitive verb. So we can see it right here. So the verb disappear is an intransitive verb which does not require, okay, or which requires rather, which does not require a complement, as you can see here. That the verb deny is a transitive verb and does not, and requires an NP. And the verb give is a detransitive verb which requires two NP as its complement. So in addition to this, in order to license the grammatical sentence we have in the previous one, we need to have the following 3 VP rules. Okay? So, kaya pa guys? Okay. So I hope that you have reviewed this one. This is part of your prelim, and this is just a review. Okay, so let's move on to the most important part of this discussion, which is the ta-da! This one. Okay, we have here an example of a structure using the X bar rule. Okay. So X bar rules directly solve the endocentricity issue for they refer to the head of the sentence. So assume that the X is N. Okay, assume that the X is N, then we will have N, N bar, and NP structures. So let's focus here as an example on the parts of speech or the POS of the sentence. We guys, kaya pa guys? Hello? Hello? Okay. All
Dili
right.
na, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay. You might wonder, ma'am, ano mag-feature structure man ta? Remember that remember the verb disappear, denied, and katabitang ko line siya nga verb ba? Intransitive verb, transitive verb, line siya, which requires different complements, different modifiers, and so on. Important yung feature structure because it identifies the features of the word in that sentence. So be able to identify what is the correct complement, what is the correct modifier, or if that word or if that head requires or needs a complement or modifier. So we had to identify that using feature structure. Okay, nasabtan ra guys? Kana bang murabag kuan? Kanang si tawag ani? Kana bang if kana bitong sa kuan pa rag sa ni kanang sa elements, sa chemical elements ba, di ba natay table sa chemical of elements, tapos na siya atomic number, weight niya, yung ano na siya, wala siya kinahanglan niya identify what are the feature of that word to determine whether or not it is grammatical, nga na siya complement, na siya modifier, or if it fits into that sentence. Okay? Okay, Nam? Kaya pa, guys? Hello?
Kayahon, ma'am.
Kaya
Hey pa, ma'am.
laban lang go, laban. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so the notion of do not bilibog ha. Ayaw mo kalibog ani mga numbers, kanang mga POS, kana siya in this kanang mga feature structure because naraman siya gidiscuss raman siya sa book. You just have to read, understand lang gid siya. Okay, so we have the notion 1 here, the number 1 box, naka-box siya, naka-1 nga box, which shows whatever the value of the feature has in one place in the structure has the same value somewhere else. So bisan pag mahimo na siya 100, basta kay pareha sila value aning kanisiya, 100 pud siya nga box, kanisya 100 po na siya, 100 po na siya, same ra na sila value. So do not be libog with that. So now why do we have to do this in X bar or X bar rules? Now we can solve the endocentricity issue, no, by referring to this one, by identifying if what is the feature, the value of the feature in the X bar rules, or in this rule, for example. So for example, let's have this rule. The XP, anong X na, ma'am? Wala ta kabalon sa na siya nga klase nga phrase. So that's why it's X. So a phrase has a specifier which has the same number as its X bar or the rest of its sentence. Okay? Now let's move on to lexicon and feature structure. Now this is the more madugong labanan. So we have seen that the properties of lexical head determine the components of the minimal phrase. Like this one here. The minimal phrase is the X bar and the whole sentence is the XP. And then in terms of complements and other properties of the head are directly properties of the phrase. So this information is encoded in lexical entry for each word in the lexicon. So lexical entry at least includes phonological, morphological, syntactic, and semantic information, like this one right here. So these are minimal lexical information for the verb puts. So we can put here, this one, it's a verb, it's finite, it's in third singular form. As an argument information, it is an agent, a theme, a location, and semantic information. We just have to copy that it is an agent with the letter I, it's a theme for letter J, and its location for letter K. Now, what do we have to remember here is that the phonological information about how the word is pronounced is, of course, phonological information. The syntactic information indicates that this particular word is a verb right here and is in the third singular present finite form. Okay, the argument information or the argument structure represents the number of arguments which the verb selects to indicate the participants that are minimally involved in the event expressed in the verb. So, this argument information is linked to its more precise meaning as indicated by the indexes I, J, K, and these refer to participants denoted by the arguments. Finally, the semantic structure represents the verb's meaning, relates three participants. Someone, agent who is doing the action, something, theme being put in a place, and some place or location as it is put in. So these lexical entries can be represented in a more semantic and precise way through the system of feature structure. Okay, now this is the most important part. Uh, how can we write this lexical information of a verb or of a word through feature structure? So we can represent this lexical information in terms of feature structure and their values. So we represent a formal and implicit way of representing it with feature structure through the attribute value matrix. Okay, so remember here that uh, using feature structure should have the following value. It can have the value of each attribute here. It can be atomic, element, a list, a set, or a feature structure. Upat na siya. Okay? An atomic element, dili siya atomic bomb ha. Atomic element, a list, a set, or a feature structure. So remember that one. Here we have, this is the atomic one. Naka-type siya, naka italicized. This is now the, what's this? This is the list. This is now the set, and this bracket represents the feature structure. So one important property of every feature structure is that it is typed. Saan ang type, ma? Means naka-indicate siya. Okay? Each feature structure is relevant only for a given type, which means that this is a type, this is a type. So naka-indicate siya if what is even though every feature structure is typed in the present grammar, we will not specify the type of each feature structure unless it is necessary for the discussion. So, dapat naka-indicate siya unsang imuhang, for example, if it's a verb, what is the verb, and so on. And these are the attributes, guys. Okay, the name is an attribute. Location is also an attribute. So, for example, the type university have many properties, including name, location, but having major is inappropriate. So, for example, in linguistics, mind you that this example is just basically not, this one is not connected to linguistics ha. Ilaha lang siyang i-discuss primarily sa unsang feature structure before diving into the linguistic part of the feature structure. So, gi-example lang siya unsaon pag buhat of feature structure. And then, for example, we might declare that in a verb, the type verb, there is a tense, there is unsa pa man, tense, what else? What other attributes of verbs are there? Pwede na siya. So the type is verb, and then these are the attributes or tense, for example. So let's take a look at this one. This is the type, or this is the type feature structure. This is about the author of the book. Okay, for example, these are the attributes of the of this person. So what is the name? His name is Kim. This is now in atomic this is written in that the attribute name is atomic. So nga na siya pagkasulat. Whereas the value of sons here is a list. Like duha man iyahang son, so list siya. And then the value of hobbies is a set. Set kay daghan man siya. It's a set of hobbies. And then the advanced degree is a feature structure which in turn has 3 attributes. So a feature structure within a feature structure could have also the same kind of attributes in the bigger feature structure. Okay, let's continue. Let us continue our madugong bakbakan. Charot. Okay, let's continue, guys. Okay, let's see here. Let me share my screen again. So going back, we are now on feature structure, huh? Feature structure. Okay, so why do we have to use feature structure again? We needed it to identify the features, okay? Basically the features of the word, or for example, the verb. That is very important in determining the rest of the sentence that the verb or the word is in. So remember that the head chooses, okay, or determines its complements and modifiers. So we have to remember that. So let's have a look again at this one. So for example, we have here the feature structure of the word author, or the author of the book. So the author's name is Kim. The attribute name is Kim. The attribute or the value sons have two lists. Two in the list, which is Richard and Edward and Richard. So it's basically common sense that Edward, because it's a list, okay, which means Edward is the oldest and this one is the youngest. Richard is the youngest. Okay. And then the value hobbies is a set, which means kanang there are many of these value. Okay, so swimming, jogging, reading, and then advanced degree is a feature structure. So if you notice, it has a bracket inside this feature structure. So within this feature structure, there is a smaller feature structure for the value or for the feature advanced degree. Okay, so we also have this notion in feature structure called structure sharing, which is used to represent cases where two features or attributes have identical value. For example, we have the same feature structure for individual. The attribute name or the value Kim, the value telephone number has this number, which has the same value for the telephone number on the list, okay, on the list or on this other feature for the attribute sons. Now, we also have this notion called subsumption, which is concerns the relationship between a feature structure with a general information and one with more specific information. So in such cases, the general one subsumes the specific one. So for example, this one, individual, the attribute name Kim subsumes this other attribute or other value. Okay, mean to say, gikuan lang siya ba? Gi-add lang siya. Gi-assume sa, subsume. Wala siya gi-assume niya ang other attribute or other value, which is also available or which is also correct or true for this typed feature. We also have the notion of unification. So for example, this feature and this feature have the same value or attribute with the typed individual. So they can be unified or they can be added together to form this bigger or unified feature structure. Now, to further understand that, let's move on to the linguistic entities of feature structure. Now, I want you to remember, guys, that all throughout the semester, we are going to, use this one to identify the features of a specific word, especially features of a verb. Okay? So any individual or entity, including a linguistic expression, can be represented by feature structure. For example, the word puts, whose general type is a verb, okay, can have a feature structure like the following. So the verb phonological example is, or value is put. Its syntactic value is it's a part of speech, which is a verb. Its verb form of the form of the verb is finite. It's a finite verb. And the argument structure is that it is an agent. It is part of a theme. It is a location. And for the semantics value is that, or semantic feature, it could be a predicate. Okay, it could be an agent, theme, and location. So let's try to understand further that one. So this feature structure has roughly the same information as the informal representation of the individual value or individual feature that I discussed earlier. So the verb puts, like any other verb, has its own phonological value, syntactic value, argument structure, or the arg, st, and semantic information. So the syntactic attributes indicate that the parts of speech or POS value is a verb. Okay, and that it has a finite verbal inflection form, value, or V form. Okay, so verbal inflectional form value. And the argument structure attribute indicates, this one, indicates that the verb selects 3 arguments with the semantic role agent, theme, and location, which will be realized as the subject and 2 complements in the full analysis. The semantic feature represents the information this verb denotes, the predicate relation, put relation. So whose 3 participants are linked to the elements in the argument structure via the indexing value of I, J, and K. So, gets na guys? Guys, hello? Hello po? Hello po? Kaya pa guys? Guys, kaya pa?
Kakayanin.
Alright. Ha? Basta magkamamo. Sige, questions sabi, questions sa. Questions before we proceed. Hello? Come on.
Wala ko'y question, ma'am.
Wala na.
Bago pa ko connect. Karon pa ko na-connect, ma'am.
Sige, kinsa man yung question? Oh, Kisol, maayong pagkatulog diyan, Kisol. Good. Okay, questions guys, please. Back to me. Questions bitaw, guys. Please po. Wala pangutana? Kaya mag-end na lang ta. Hello? Hello? Hello, nangatulog siguro na sila ay.
Hello, ma'am.
Sige. Questions pa po. Gusto ko na yung mangutana.
Wala, ma'am.
Wala pangutana.
May process.
Ma'am, kuhan tayo, ma'am. Ma'am, ay, ma'am. Wala may
Lisod
tulong sa may
kayo.
pangutana, ma'am.
Listen kayo.
Ginoo ko. May kabalo sa amay pangutana.
No, dali raw tani siya nato sa kuanay sa regular classroom. But anyway,
Ayun to, ma'am. Kay ma-explain mo good sa through board.
no, sa board, no?
Na-explanation ba kay sa ani nga.
Nga po.
Magkamamo, sabot.
No? Sige lang. Anyway, napata sa
Kailangan gid siya dako-dako nga time, ma'am.
no, dako gyud siya nga time. Well, anyway, what we can do is that wala man good siya kuan, wala siya explanation sa YouTube. I really have a hard time finding kanang discussion bitaw niya nga yun sa pagbutang niya feature structure, why is it formed that way? Ingon na bitaw. Pero sige lang, we'll find ways. But for now, ingon na ni siya guys. The quizzes are postpone na po ng assignment. Sige lang, the quizzes are objective type. So, what you're going to do is read the rest of chapter 5, which is more on heads and complements, I think. Yeah, and then it's just basically objective type. So what you read is what is in the quiz. So for example, what is kanang kuan? So may example questions ato gani. What is blah 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 anara? And basically what you can see in your reference book. Okay?
Ma'am, lisod man ang mga question sa book, ma'am, ay.
Unsa sa quiz or sa assignment?
O sa quiz sa tanan. Assignment, ma'am.
Sa assignment. Okay, sige lang.
Ma'am. Lisod.
Oh, lagi, I know. Sige lang guys. Ano na lang, what we are going to do is I will give you a reading assignment instead. Okay? So, what you're going to do as your assignment is that you will not answer, supposedly you're going to answer this one. Hoy, let me show you this one first. Supposedly you're going to answer this one, which you can see in the book naman. These examples or these questions are in the book. So you're supposed to answer this one. For each sentence, draw a tree structure, then give the feature structure of the words in this italicized in the sentence, which is italicized. So supposedly you're going to do that. You're going to write a feature structure of the of the word made. But let us cancel that idea because that's not a good idea. Let's not go to negativity and so on. So I will give you I will just give you a reading assignment. Okay, reading assignment. I want you to review, guys. Review what you review chapters. This one, chapter 4 and chapter 5 of the main reference book, heads and complements, and more on subjects and complements. And what I want you guys to do is write every feature structure that you encounter. For example, this one. Let's have this one first, please. Para bitaw ma-take note nimo siya, masabtan nimo siyang maayo ba? Okay, for example, you write this in your notebook, okay? With the understanding, you write while reading ba? For example, this is phonological property or feature of the verb, which is puts. Okay, I will write now syn, S-Y-N, which is the syntax value or syntax attribute of the verb, which is for parts of speech, is this a verb? For the verbal inflectional form value, it is finite. Ingon na ba? Okay? So it's just a reading assignment, but also a study assignment. Okay? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Also this one. It's very important, Manggod, that understanding comes first. Okay? We cannot isa-isa this one here in the virtual conference because mahutdan jud tag time. So what I want you guys to do is read and then take note. Practice how to write. Okay, practice how to write feature structure para pod ma-practice ta, and then later on kaya-kaya ra nato sa atong mga beauty, sa atong mga powers. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I will not ask you to submit anything. Just make sure that you understand all the feature structure. Focus on the feature structure. Write the feature structure. If pwede ka nang i-record mo kagalingon nga gibasa nimo siya para over mabalik nimo masabtan nimo unsa pasabot na nga feature structure. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
And then it would probably help
Yes,
if
ma'am.
you one by one at least try do the exercises in the main reference book. Naraman dadto. Try to do the exercises if you can. Okay?
Chapter 5 na siya, ma'am, no?
Chapter 4 of 5. It starts in chapter 4 sa kuan, sa lexical and feature structure. Sige, pangutana pa guys. Questiones. Okay, remember that the quiz has a deadline. It's open until October 7. And then please take note of the limits and the regulation in taking the quiz. Okay, questions so far?
None, ma'am.
None?
None.
Laban lang kita guys, laban lang kita. Sige,
Nansa.
Nansa. Sige, don't worry, I will look for other reference book that will probably kanang easier siya to take. Okay? Pero let's have this challenge because we are now on syntax manggod. So it's more kanang na gid siya, syntax na gid siya.
May pinakalisod, ma'am. Grabe.
Oh, mo pinakalisod siya actually. Kay kuan man gud siya. Compared to phonetics, compared to ideally, napay mas lisod joy. Napay mas lisod. Napay pragmatics
Napay
which
mga-
is pragmatics, napay semantics kana siya. Napay mga other major Englishes nga kalabad sa ulo. Pero laban lang gyapon ta.
English
Bago na
major
siguro
pa man
po,
yun.
sabi mo.
Pero
English
basin
major palo.
lagi basin mangutanang ma'am dili man naman na magamit sa pagtudlo ng kuan. Uy, magamit niyo na siya in your thesis or in your research paper because remember that you are going to study English, okay? Your course is English language studies, right? So you have to be able to know how to conduct researches in syntax that uses feature structure because it might come handy, right? For example, nakita nga bagong verb na ginagamit sa people in social media, like for example, yeet, kanang yeet, kakuan man ng yeet, Y-E-E-T, kanang yeet, what does that mean? What is the feature structure of the word yeet? Pwede naman siya buhatan og research paper. Di na kay research paper. Ana bitaw? So, it comes in handy, especially in the field of syntax. Okay?
Hotdan siguro nagduguan mo.
Okay, ma'am.
Mayit
Guys,
po.
mamalhin na tagpulsay.
Mayit po mi mayit. Sige lang, nga naman niya siya, God. Your batch is very different from our batch, I would say. Amo kay linguistics, general linguistics lang to mo, pero karon ambot lang. Isa-isa na gid siya, which is much more difficult, I would say. Pero sige lang, laban lang Japon.
Pan lang, ma'am. Basta di lang mabuang.
Ana, pagkaon lang gyud, kaon lang gyud, no?
Buwan.
Lagi. Oh, don't be stressed too much by your online classes, no? Kita mata na nag-struggle, pero naragay na siya sa pagdala, guys. Tarungan lang natong dala atong life, no? Atong stress, dili lang kata pa stress ug maayo. Dapat
Kaya
ang
kay ma'am nung mas puan.
dapat ang stress may mas stress sa to ah. Okay. All right. Anyways, any more questions? Hmm?
Nansa pa, mangutan.
Nansa. Sige. Sige, do not hesitate to ask me questions. And if something you encountered some problems, especially in our Moodle, for example, wala na post, ma'am, wala lagi ang quiz, ma'am, wala ang lecture notes, ma'am, kanikuan ka na. Please inform me right away because lapses na siya sa part na mo as a teacher, pero kay dili bata na namo makita, no? So lahi ang point of view sa students when it comes to Moodle, lahi po ng point of view namo as a teacher. So basin na oversight lang to siya ba, wala namang nabantayan. So I would really appreciate if you would inform me right away if there are problems you encountered, especially sa Moodle or especially sa atong mga lessons. Okay?
Okay na.
Okay. Salamat kayo everybody for coming here today. I hope that it helped you somehow to understand, especially on feature structure. And starting now, we'll focus on that so that later on when you do your research na, you'll be able to use that, utilize how to present lexical information through feature structure so that it would be much more helpful in your analysis in the future. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Analysis research paper. Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you so much, everyone. I will upload this one later today, the recording, so that you can also review again and again this discussion. Once again, thank you so much, everyone. I really do appreciate you coming here today and your participation. Thank you so much. See you next time. Please keep updated and posted sa atong GC and as well as a message ninyo sa Moodle. I will post every now and then updates so that your learning will be smooth as much as possible. Thank you so much once again. God bless. Please take care. Be positive. Ayaw sa COVID, but in life in general. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye-bye.